Welcome to this Accela University video on the topic of owner search. My name is Thomas Strauss and I will show you how to use the reference owner lookup from several places within the Civic platform. First, I will demonstrate how the reference owner search tool works. Then I will show you how to look up and add an owner from both a record and the intake form. Let's get started. You can access your reference owner tool by navigating to the Launchpad, where you should have the owner's space listed, or in my case, I already have the owner space pinned on my main menu. Once I select that tile, I can see the owner reference search form. This form, similar to address and parcel, also has some custom attributes at the lower portion of the form. And in your agency situation, you may have the same thing. So I'm going to look up an owner, and because I have an external owner database, I want to be sure to use the exact format as required by my APO system. So I will enter a full name, and it will be full name starting with last name, comma, no space, and first name, and submit, and that returns two results. And if I select one of these to open it up, I can see the detail. So I have an owner detail tab. I can see the specifics, and then if I click on the next tab, I could see any conditions that have been added to the reference owner. And again, conditions applied at the owner database level will follow any records that are associated with that particular owner. I also have an associated public user tab, and there's no associated public user, apparently no account for citizen access associated with this particular owner. So that's the owner reference lookup. The next one we'll take a look at will be accessing an owner, looking up an owner from a record. So I have a record pinned on my main menu, and when I navigate to the record, you can see in the quick access ribbon at the top of the record under location it says none provided for address, parcel, and owner. So I'll use that to jump to the owner tab, and here you can see there is a button for a new owner to be added, delete, and look up. Just as with address and parcel, the new button allows you to add, in this case, an owner to the record, and that could be any owner that I make up. It's not validated against the database, and it exists only on this transactional record. If I use lookup, I'm looking up from my APO database and looking for an owner. So that's what I'll do in this case. And by the way, just as with address and parcel, if you have a required owner here and you want to add a different owner or the correct owner, you would have to add a new owner before you can delete any existing owner. In this case, I'll click look up, and again, I'll put in the full name and using the appropriate format. I'm able to see two results, and I can choose one of those by selecting the select button. And just as with address and parcel, when adding a new owner, the way my system is configured, it will add the associated address, parcel, GIS object, and that is shown in the message. So I've added my owner to the record. If I refresh the quick access ribbon at the top, I can see that now reflected there. I've got an address, a parcel, and an owner. So that's looking up an owner from the record. And the next one we'll look at is using the intake form to look up an owner, add the owner to the intake form. After navigating to my Launchpad, I can select the Create New Record button, which gives me my record type filter where I can choose the type of record I want to create. And as soon as the form opens, I can navigate to my owner section, which may or may not be required, and depending on your agency's configuration for a given record type, there may be validation enforced or in some cases not. So if I navigate to owner, I have a search button, so I'm allowed to enter some criteria and search. I also have a GIS button to open up the map. So the first example will be opening up GIS, and there could be an owner that has multiple properties, and maybe you want to validate the owner against the map. So in this case, I'll use my advanced search, navigate to owners, and once again, I'll put in the full name and then use my show results button to see what is populated on the map. So in this case, I get 2 different listings, and if I look at the results, the parcel for the first listing shows one address and the next one shows a different address. So I can use the map to see where those owner properties are located, and that's how I might use GIS with an owner. Now if I navigate back to my owner section on the intake form, I also can enter a name just as before, and I'll do the same name again using the appropriate format. And I get a pop-up that shows me a couple of results, and I select one of those by choosing the select button, which then my form is updated, and it brings in the owner I chose and also the associated parcel and address. And so those have all populated those sections on the intake form. And so that's how you can use the owner lookup on the intake form. And so that wraps it up for this particular video on owner search. You should now be familiar with how to look up owner information from the reference owner space, and you should also know how to look up and add an owner from a record and also the intake form. Thanks for watching.